Cast out. Don't cry, Mama, please. The girl's voice cracked against the dry wind, but Martha's arms were too full to hush her. A wooden chest, half split at the seams, lay in the dirt road behind her. Another child clung to her skirts, hair tangled with dust, while the youngest whimpered in the crook of her elbow. The Calloway homestead door slammed. A man's voice bellowed from the porch, sharp as a whip. "Take your brats and be gone, woman. We got no use for you. No sons, no name, no place here." Martha kept walking, bare shoes scuffing through the dust. The words stung worse than stones, but she didn't turn back. Behind her, laughter broke out, low, bitter, a sound that carried across the yard. One of the brothers spit into the dirt. Another kicked her chest of things until the lid snapped off and clothes spilled like old rags. Her late husband's jacket, the only good coat they owned, fell into the dust. "Don't leave it, Mama," the eldest cried, tugging at her arm. But Martha didn't stop. Her voice was hoarse. A whisper meant more for herself than her daughters. "We'll keep moving, girls. Keep moving till we're away." The road through Dry Creek was empty save for a few shadows behind shuttered windows. Folks peered out, but said nothing. A curtain twitched. A door closed quick. The sound of her children's bare feet slapping against the packed earth was the only witness to her shame. The sun pressed down, merciless. Sweat cut lines through the dirt on Martha's face. Her arms trembled from the weight of the youngest. Her skirts clung heavy with dust. Each step felt stolen, each breath another fight. By the well at the edge of town, she paused. The bucket rope creaked, swaying in the still heat. Her eldest reached for it, but Martha pulled her hand back. "No, not here, not where they can see." The girls fell silent. Their mother's face was carved hard as stone, but her eyes, red-rimmed, hollow, spoke what her mouth did not, fear. They left the town behind, the lone road stretching like a scar into the prairie. Grasshoppers clicked in the brittle weeds. The horizon shimmered, a wavering mirage that promised water where there was none. The youngest whimpered again. "Hush now, sweet one," Martha murmured, shifting her to the other arm. "Mama's got you." Her knees buckled once, catching herself on the hard earth. Dust billowed up, clinging to her lips. The middle child tugged at her sleeve, panic bright in her eyes. "Mama, don't fall. Please don't fall." Martha straightened, though her breath rattled. The Calloway homestead lay far behind, but its shadow still clung to her. Every step forward felt watched, cursed, abandoned. By late afternoon, her strength failed. She sank to her knees at the edge of a wide pasture where a lone cottonwood tree twisted against the sky. The girls circled close, silent now, their faces drawn tight with hunger and fear. Martha lowered the baby gently on her lap and pressed her forehead to the earth. A sob shuddered out, dry as the dust itself. That was when the creak of leather came, slow, steady, deliberate. Hoofbeats followed, muted against the dry ground. The girls tensed. One gripped a rock in her small fist. Out of the wavering heat, a rider appeared. Tall in the saddle, shoulders bent against the sun, hat brim shadowing a face lined like weathered stone. A sorrel horse carried him with unhurried grace. He stopped a few paces away. The silence pressed heavy between them. Martha raised her head, lips cracked, voice raw. "We'll move on. Don't mean trouble. Just rest in a spell." The man didn't answer. He swung down from the saddle, boots crunching the dry grass. His shadow stretched long across them. The eldest daughter stepped in front of her mother, chin lifted though her knees shook. The rock in her hand trembled. The stranger's gaze fell to the child, then to the baby in Martha's arms, then back to Martha herself. His eyes were pale, washed out by years of sun and loss, and they held a weight that made the world seem still. He reached to his saddle, pulled free a dented canteen, and set on the ground before them. Martha stared, her pride warred with thirst, with the trembling lips of her children. She picked up the canteen, uncapped it, and let the girls drink first. The water was warm, metallic, but it might as well have been life itself. Only when they'd had their fill did she sip, careful, measured. She wiped her mouth, lifted her eyes. "Why?" The man said nothing. He only tipped his hat, then offered his hand, not to her, but to the baby reaching out with curious fingers. The rough palm stayed steady as the child touched it. At last, in a voice low and gravel-worn, he spoke. "Got a wagon yonder. Shade. Food enough." Martha swallowed. Her throat burned with more than thirst. "We can't pay." The man studied her, unreadable. Then, soft as wind over dry grass, he said, "Wasn't a skinned." The eldest lowered her rock. The middle one clung to her mother's skirts again. Martha's shoulders sagged, though her eyes brimmed with something fierce, part relief, part fear of owing yet another debt. The man turned, leading his horse toward the pasture beyond the cottonwood. He didn't look back to see if they followed. Martha gathered the baby, steadied the other two, and after a long breath, stepped into his shadow. And so it was that the cast-out woman crossed paths with the lone rancher. Folks would say later the moment felt like fate, though at the time, it was just a stranger's silence, a canteen of water, and a road too long to walk alone. The lone rancher's oath. The hammer struck iron. Sparks leapt, brief stars in the dim barn. Jedediah Boone lifted the branding iron from the fire and pressed it steady to the calf's flank. The animal bawled, ropes straining, while the girls watched from the stall door, wide-eyed and silent. "Hold firm," Boone muttered, not to them, but to the air. His hands were sure, movements practiced, each step measured like a man who'd done this work more years than he cared to count. When the calf bolted free, the eldest whispered, "He didn't even flinch, Mama." Boone heard, but gave no sign. He dipped the iron back into the coals. Martha sat just outside the barn, mending a torn shirt with clumsy stitches, her daughters huddled near. She lifted her eyes now and then, studying the rancher's broad back, the silence that seemed to follow him like a shadow. Later, when the sky bruised with evening, Boone set 3 tin plates on the table. Cornbread, beans, and a strip of salt pork for each. He placed them before the girls without a word. The middle child whispered, "Thank you, sir." Boone only nodded and sat down, eating slow, steady. The sound of spoons on tin filled the room, broken only by the crackle of the hearth. It was Martha who finally spoke, voice soft. "We can work for it. I can wash, mend, whatever needs doing. The girls can help with chores." Boone's fork paused midair. His eyes, pale and distant, lifted to hers. A child's worth ain't measured in work, nor in being son or daughter. A child's worth is love. That's enough. Martha's hands trembled on her lap. She dropped her gaze, blinking fast, as though those words cut deeper than the Calloway's cruelty. The next days were a rhythm of labor and silence. Boone rose with the sun, saddled his horse, checked the fences. He showed the eldest how to wind twine tight, the middle how to scatter seed for the chickens. He lifted the youngest onto his horse one morning, leading them slow across the pasture while she squealed with delight. Martha watched, arms folded, fighting back the swell in her throat. But trouble came like storm clouds on the horizon. At the general store in Dry Creek, Boone stepped inside for flour and coffee. The girls clung to Martha outside, whispering nervously. Through the window came the sound of voices raised, rough, familiar. The Calloway brothers. "Boone, you gone soft-talking in that barren woman? You think cast-outs and girls make you a family?" Their laughter was harsh, scraping against the wooden walls. Boone's reply was low, steady, but carried through the thin glass. "They ain't yours to speak of. Not yours neither," another spat. "Best hand 'em back, for they turn your place into a beggar's den." The store fell quiet. Boots shuffled. A chair scraped. Then Boone emerged, sack of flour slung over his shoulder, face hard as stone. His eyes flicked once to Martha and the girls, then to the Callaways leaning against their wagon. No words passed, but the air between them bristled, sharp as barbed wire. That night, Martha stood at the porch rail while Boone mended harness leather by lantern light. The wind carried coyotes' cries, long and hollow. "They'll come," she whispered. Boone's hands stilled, then resumed, each stitch tight, unhurried. "Then we'll be ready." "I can't." Her voice cracked. "I can't lose my girls." His gaze lifted, catching hers in the lantern glow. The lines in his face deepened, shadows carving the grief of years. "You won't." The girls slept inside, but Martha lingered, the weight of his promise pressing against the night. 2 days later, Boone walked the fence line at dawn. Wires sagged where it shouldn't. Hoof prints marred the soft dirt. A steer lay dead in the pasture, its throat cut, hide already buzzing with flies. Boone crouched low, fingers brushing the tracks. More than one horse. Heavy riders. Martha came running, skirts hiked, the eldest at her side. Her voice broke with dread. "Jed." He rose slow, eyes narrowed on the horizon. The plains stretched endless, but he saw them, shadows that lingered where they shouldn't. "They're warning us," he said. Martha clutched her daughter's hand, knuckles white. Back at the ranch, Boone set to work. He patched the barn doors, hammered shutters tight, stacked firewood higher than needed. Martha followed him, questions rising but dying on her lips when she saw his face. Once, she caught him in the barn loft, oiling an old rifle. The weapon gleamed even in the dim light, cared for though unused. His hands moved with the familiarity of muscle memory, not hesitation. When he saw her, he set it aside, covering it with canvas. Just in case. She stared, heart pounding. "You've done this before." Boone's eyes met hers, unblinking. War teaches a man what he can do, teaches him what he can't walk away from. The words hung heavy, leaving silence thicker than the night outside. That evening, as the girls dozed by the fire, Martha whispered again, her voice trembling. "Why help us? You could have let us pass. You owe us nothing." Boone stirred the embers, the glow painting his scarred knuckles red. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, in a voice rough as gravel, "Had a boy once. Buried him, for he turned 10. Some losses carve a man hollow. Some losses teach him what matters." Martha's throat tightened. She pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting the sob that threatened to break. Boone leaned back, eyes on the fire. "No man, no family, no town's got the right to measure a child's worth. That's God's work. Or maybe just the work of those that love him." The fire popped, sparks spiraling upward. Martha's tears glistened in the glow, but she said nothing, only drew her daughters closer. Outside, the prairie lay silent, but the tension in the air was thick, coiled like a rattler waiting to strike. And Boone, quiet, steady, watchful, sat with his rifle hidden in the loft, his hands steady as stone. And so it was said, the lone rancher bound himself by an oath unspoken, that a cast-out woman and her daughters would not be taken, nor measured by cruel men's reckonings. For once Jedediah Boone set his mind to guard. The earth itself seemed to lean quiet, waiting for what was coming. Blood and dust. The saloon doors swung wide, crashing against the walls. Boots thudded heavy across the floorboards, spurs clinking, voices sharp with liquor. "Boone!" Jedediah lifted his head from the counter where he'd been nursing black coffee. The Calloway brothers stood framed by the glare of late afternoon, their shadows long, their grins mean. "You think yourself some savior?" One jeered, stomping closer. "Hiding behind skirts and whelps?" The room stilled. Cart slapped down. Whiskey glasses froze midair. Boone set his cup aside, slow, deliberate, his pale eyes fixed on them. "Not hiding." The youngest Calloway spat on the floor. "Then hand him back. Ain't right they live with a dried-up soldier too old to stand his ground." Boone rose, tall and quiet, his shadow stretching over the table. The hush in the saloon grew heavier, the air thick with the smell of sweat and tobacco. "Best let it lie," Boone said, voice even. The eldest Calloway sneered. "Or what? You'll glare us to death." Laughter broke, rough and jagged. But the sound faltered when Boone stepped forward. His gaze didn't waver, didn't blink. Men who'd known war recognized the look and shifted in their seats. Without another word, Boone left the saloon, boots ringing against the porch. The Callaways' laughter followed, but it was thinner now, nervous around the edges. That night, the ranch groaned under a restless wind. The girls lay curled close, whispers of fear on their lips. Martha sat by the window, staring into the dark. "Jed," her voice was a whisper. "I heard him. They'll come." Boone stood by the doorway, coat half on, eyes fixed to the black horizon. "Reckon so." The cry of a coyote rose, long and low. Another answered. Then hoofbeats. Distant many. Martha gasped, clutching the girls to her. Boone moved steady, pulling open the cellar door. Down. Quiet now. The eldest clung to his sleeve. Don't let him take Mama. His hand rested briefly on her head, firm and sure. No one's talking nothing. The cellar door shut. Silence fell. Outside, the hoofbeats swelled. Lanterns bobbed like fireflies in the dark. Shadows spilled across the yard. Men dismounting, ropes in hand, guns glinting. The Calloway brothers strode forward, faces lit by the orange sway of flame. Boone, one bellowed. Come out. Best not make this harder than it needs be. The barn door creaked. Boone stepped into the yard, coat drawn tight, lantern glow carving deep lines across his face. He held no gun. Only his stance, calm, unbending, met them. You've had your say, he called. Now turn back. The brothers laughed. A rope swung in the air. You think we fear an old ghost of soldier? Boone's gaze swept over them, steady as the stars. Fear? No, but you'll remember. They jeered, spitting, drawing steel. Then Boone turned, walked to the barn. From the shadows, he drew a long bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He unrolled it slow, deliberate, revealing a rifle worn but cared for, wood polished by years of use. Gasps rippled through the night. Boone checked the chamber, the motion smooth, practiced. His hands did not shake. He slung the rifle across his arm and stepped back into the lantern glow. The Callaways froze, grins fading. One muttered, low and uncertain, "That's Boone of Shiloh." The name struck like a bell. Whispers moved through their ranks. Old stories of a sharpshooter captain, a man who walked from battlefields when no others did, a man who never missed. Boone leveled the rifle, voice carrying like thunder over dry earth. Leave this land, or meet the dead I carry with me. The brothers shifted, pride warring with fear. One raised his pistol, hands unsteady. The crack of Boone's rifle split the night. The pistol flew from the man's hand, clattering into the dirt. The echo rolled across the prairie like judgment itself. No one breathed. The flames guttered in the wind. Boone's voice was low, iron-bound. Next shot won't be for iron. The Callaways backed, curses breaking into the night, dragging their wounded kin with them. Hooves pounded, fading fast into the darkness. Boone stood alone in the yard, rifle still steady. His breath came slow, even. He turned his gaze skyward, as if counting ghosts. At last, he lowered the gun. The cellar door creaked open. Martha stepped out, daughters clinging to her skirts, eyes wide with awe and terror. Her voice broke. Who are you?" Boone looked at her, pale eyes weary, sorrow carved deep. Just a man who's buried too much to let more graves be dug. The girls pressed closer to him, unafraid. And in the hush of that bloodless battle, a legend took root. One carried not in boasts, but in the silence of a lone rancher who had bared the weight of war once more. And so it was said, under the hard stars of the frontier, Boone revealed what lay hidden. Not a recluse, not a broken man, but a soldier of dust and blood who carried the weight of 100 dead in his hands. The Callaways fled that night, but the prairie remembered the sound of his rifle, and Dry Creek whispered his name in fear and awe alike. The door slammed wide, the night wind carrying grit and the smell of iron. Jonah stood there, cold drawn, his shadow cast long against the floorboards. "Step away from her," he said, his voice low but edged like steel drawn in the dark. Harlan turned slow, smirk curling under his mustache. "You?" He laughed, hollow, bitter. "A rancher with a dead wife and no bloodline? You think you can stand against me?" His hand hovered near his holster, twitching. Sarah clutched her daughters tighter, her breath breaking in quick gasps. One girl whispered, "Mama, don't look." The floor creaked beneath Jonah's boots as he advanced, steady, unhurried. His eyes never left Harlan's. "I buried blood under the flag when you were still hiding behind your father's barn," he said, voice carrying through the silence. "And I don't scare easy." Harlan's hand twitched again, but Jonah was already moving. The gunfire cracked, thunder in the small room. Dust exploded from the wall. Harlan's pistol spun from his grip, clattering across the boards. He staggered back, clutching his arm, fury blazing. Jonah didn't lower his gun. "Pick it up," he growled. Harlan froze, sweat glistening on his temple. His bravado faltered. "You wouldn't." Jonah's next shot shattered the lantern hanging near the beam, plunging the room into half-darkness, firelight from the hearth flickering against his weathered face. The children gasped. The sound of Sarah's breath trembled through the silence. "Try me," Jonas said. The outlaw's men outside shuffled, muttering, rifles shifting nervously. One called, "Boss? You want us in?" "No," Harlan snapped, his pride cracking like brittle wood. He stared at Jonah, then at the woman clutching her daughters, shame crawling up his throat. Jonah's voice was steady as a preacher's benediction. "She's done being cast aside. You hear me? These girls will grow with heads held high, not bowed by the weight of your cruelty. I'll see to that with my own 2 hands." Harlan's sneer faltered into something smaller, weaker. He stumbled backward, then turned for the door. His men parted like cattle before a storm as he pushed past them, blood dripping from his sleeve, pride leaking faster. Jonah followed him out, revolver still raised. The night stretched wide, stars sharp against the black sky. Coyotes howled in the far hills. "You come back," Jonah called, voice carrying into the open dark. "You don't leave again." Harlan mounted his horse with clumsy hands, rage and humiliation burning in his face. But he said nothing. His men trailed after him into the desert, their torches dwindling until only the moonlight remained. Silence fell. Dust swirled in the air, and the house stood trembling in its stillness. Jonah holstered his pistol slow, shoulders heavy, breath unsteady. Inside, Sarah stood frozen, the children pressed against her skirts. Their eyes, wide, wet, searching, fell on him. One of the girls stepped forward, her little hands clenched into fists. Are you staying?" she whispered. Jonah knelt, meeting her gaze. His rough hand rested on her small shoulder. "If you'll have me," he said softly. The girl's face broke into a trembling smile, tears shining in her eyes. She buried her face against his chest, her sisters following, clutching at him like roots clinging to the earth after storm. Sarah's tears spilled then, her body shaking with relief, with disbelief, with hope she thought she'd buried. Jonah wrapped them close, the 4 of them bound in the hush of that flickering firelight. Outside, the land stretched endless and wild, the desert winds carrying whispers of a new story, one that would ride the trails for generations, told and retold like a hymn of justice. And the old storyteller's voice, graveled with time, would carry the legend to every listening ear. She was cast out for bearing no sons, until the lone rancher said, "A child's worth is measured in love, not blood." And from that night on, no man dared question it again.